Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. That should brighten your day a little. Actually, a lot. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
I was raised in a cult. Of course, if you'd have asked me all those years ago, or anyone else in our small fundamentalist church, if we were a cult, we'd have indignantly replied, absolutely not. Other groups like the Mormons or Jehovah's Witnesses, they're cults, but we're not a cult. Everything became normalized, though, but it wasn't until decades later, after I deconstructed my entire belief system and walked away from the Christian faith entirely, that I began to see just how cultish the whole thing actually was. But before all of that, for over 20 years, I'd served both as a pastor and a Bible college teacher, so I had a hand in it, furthering the toxicity also. So in the process of rebuilding my life and discovering my authentic identity, I've got lots to work through, things like religious trauma syndrome, rapture anxiety, and just so much more. Join me, Dr. Clint Haycock, on the Mind Shift podcast as we take a look at such topics as cult tactics and psychology, religious trauma syndrome and religious addiction, taking your life back after leaving a cult or high-control group, and finally, dominion theology and the dangers posed by the Christian right, not just in America, but indeed the world. You can find my show on iTunes, Podbean, Spotify, or anywhere else you get your podcasts. Who knows, it might just be time for a mind shift.
According to EgyptianMuseum.org, cats were very important to the ancient Egyptians and were even considered to be demi-deities. Not only did they protect the crops and slow the spread of disease by killing rodents, they were also thought to be the physical form of the goddess Bastet. Bastet was the goddess of protection, pleasure, and the bringer of good health. She had the head of a cat and a slender female body. Bastet was the daughter of Ra, sister of Sekhmet, the wife of Ptah, and the mother of Mihos. Since this second dynasty, Bastet was worshipped as a deity, most commonly in Lower Egypt. Her form and powers have changed over the years. It was believed that every day she would ride through the sky with her father, the sun god, Ra. As his boat pulled the sun through the sky, she would watch over and protect him. At night, she would turn into a cat to protect Ra from his greatest enemy, the serpent Apep. Due to her protective duties, she was nicknamed the Lady of the East, goddess of the rising sun, and the sacred and all-seeing eye. She is also known as the goddess of the moon and was thought to be the eye of the moon and the eye of Ra. Bastet is still worshipped today, and her protection is believed by some to be cast over modern cats. The influence that gods and deities had on ancient civilizations cannot be underestimated. Cults existed in ancient Egypt in many different forms, and that influence has not waned in this age. New Age spiritualism and secret societies take so much influence from Egyptian teachings and beliefs, and the goddess Bastet is not excluded from those influences. Not only are there historical versions of human sacrifice and tithing within the translations of hieroglyphics found in recovered remains of the ancient civilizations, ucl.ac.uk also tells us, in ancient Egypt, every day in every temple, specially designated persons performed a ritual focused on making offerings of food, drink, clothing, and ointment to a divine being, deity, king, or blessed dead, made accessible in the form of images. Through this ritual, the ancient Egyptians sought to maintain the fabric and process of the universe. According to their own writings, the ancient Egyptians did not worship idols. They did not consider the images themselves to be divine forces. Rather, the image provided a visible and tangible form in which the offerings and service of human beings could be channeled to the divine forces. In order to make an inanimate item into a possible channel for offerings, it had to be consecrated by the ritual of opening the mouth. Again, these ideas and influences are not lost today. We see them in the makeup of groups like the Rosicrucians, the Order of the Solar Temple, the Source family, and major modern religions. Most groups can be traced back to having some teachings, beliefs, or practices that were also a part of ancient Egypt's daily worship. Hello, listeners, and welcome to this week's mini-series. For this instalment, I am chatting with Desi, who offers us a story of two halves. The first half is based around a group known as Freedom Fire Ministries. The second is about an organisation that positions itself as a cat rescue non-profit known as Eva's Eden.
Ryan Seacrest here. When you have a busy schedule, it's important to maximize your downtime. One of the best ways to do that is by going to ChumbaCasino.com. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino games like spin slots, bingo, and solitaire that you can play for free for a chance to redeem some serious prizes. So hop on to ChumbaCasino.com now and live the Chumba life. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
But behind the doors of this outwardly wholesome organisation comes something a little bit darker. Don't let a punny episode title take away from the destruction and severity of Desi's experiences and stories. The cat cult may be infamous in certain online spaces, but the damage inflicted by organisations cannot be underestimated. A massive thank you and welcome to Penny and Eleanor, the two newest patrons of the Cult Vault podcast. This work wouldn't be possible without the support from donors, and it really goes a long way. I hope that you enjoy access to exclusive content. To support the show from as little as £1 a month, you can find me at patreon.com/the Cult Vault. But for now, here is Desi. So hello, Desi, and welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here today as a long-time listener and supporter of the show. We're going to be discussing something new on the podcast this week. Would you like to start by introducing yourself to the listeners?
Hi, everybody. I'm Desi. My pronouns are they, them, and I live in Bellingham, Washington.
Have you always been in Washington, or have you lived in various different parts of America?
For the most part, I've always been up here. I did have a year where I went to Job Corps in Astoria, Oregon, but got booted back here.
And the group that we're going to be talking about today, it's been known by many different names. So I wondered if you could just reel a few of them off for us.
For sure. So when I started going, it was called what it originally was called, which was Freedom Fire Ministries. And then around like 2005, they changed their name to Moriah Ministries, like Mount Moriah, where Abraham took Isaac. And then I'm pretty sure it was after I left is when they officially changed their name to the Oneness Foundation. And that was about the same time that they started their cat adoption agency, Eva's Eden.
So there's a lot of moving parts with this particular story, and there's almost sort of a group within a group that or a public facing group, and then something a bit different and perhaps more secretive happening behind the other group. So this is something that I've seen people speak about on Reddit, for example. There's been a lot of online interest around this group. And when you emailed me to tell me that this was the group that you've had personal experience with, I was really intrigued into how everything came to be. And so today we will learn all about that from our conversation. And so I guess the best place to start is to ask you if you can give us a history of the Oneness Foundation, and that will lead us nicely into discussing how Eva's Eden came to be.
For sure. So the pastor is a woman named Cheryl Ruthven, She's gone by several names. That's the one that I'm most recently aware of. When I met her, she was going by Cheryl Walker, which was her married name, but she had already been divorced by then. And then I actually don't know if she ever took on officially any of the names of any of the people she married after that. But uh, she started Freedom Fire Ministries like really early in the 2000s. She broke away from a church called Gates of Praise, which was very like a mix of like evangelical and Pentecostal. Um, but from my understanding, I never went there, but it seemed like just a very intense church, but you know, not anything too weird. I mean, that's all relative, right? But um, and then yeah, so there was a lot of the name changes, and it kind of reflects a lot of what was going on when the names changed. When I started going, it was still called Freedom Fire Ministries. And they were doing a lot of like, they were incorporating a lot of Jewish customs and celebrating a lot of Jewish holidays, even though no one in the entire church was Jewish. I'm sure maybe someone had it like in their ancestry or something, but like, yeah, no one was Jewish. And and part of that is we also stopped celebrating Christmas and Easter because there was like, you know, the pagan origins, which is funny because later on they started bringing pagan stuff in. So it'll make a lot of sense that none of it makes sense. um, and then, yeah, around 2005, they changed their name to Moriah Ministries. Um, and they started, um, the way I put it, they kind of started hating on the Freemasons. I think it just had a lot to do with like almost you know, we were promised all these heavenly treasures. And so, like, all the stuff that we've kind of learned, you know, from National Treasure and Da Vinci Code about like the Knights Templar and all that. So, like, basically, we were supposed to have all those things, but what they really were was like secret knowledge and blah, blah, blah. So, anyway, they bought a Masonic temple in Blaine to kind of quote unquote take back territory the enemy had stolen, and um, they they moved up there, and that was right around the time that I got out. Um, and when they moved up there is when they changed their name and started Eva's Eden, and Eva's Eden was like in the basement of that building, and they incorporated so many different things, and it's hard to, it all kind of flowed together in a, because like it made sense at the time, right? Because around the time the info with the Freemasons, she also brought in a lot of, and that's, she brought it in. She purported herself as a prophet. That was the big thing. And so, and with that, because she was the one hearing from God, all of the knowledge that she was bringing in um, was from God. And also, we couldn't research it because it would show that we didn't trust her or trust God. And so she started bringing in like Eastern influences, like Tai Chi and Buddhist meditation. And we learned about like chakras and the different healing crystals you could put on each of the chakras. And then when, after I got out, they started bringing in more like more pagan influences. And for a minute, they believed in the Mayan calendar. Um, and Eva's Eden is related. One to Egyptian mythology with worshiping cats. And actually, the cat on the Eva's Eden like sign is Bastet, the cat goddess. And but also they would ferry the souls of the 144,000 in the end times. And so they were supposed to be revered and all that stuff. And then they planned it for probably about a year, but and they changed places several times. But in 2013, spring of 2013, pretty much everybody from the church moved to Tennessee. There's maybe a handful of people that are still here. And at that time, they were told to tell everybody that they were leaving behind, including me, that the church disbanded and that Cheryl had moved to Scotland. I think I remember something that she was like writing or something.
Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. That should brighten your day a little. Actually, a lot. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
And so of course by this time I got out before they even left. But like for some reason I've never been sure why, but my parents still talk to me. Like, I mean, not sure. I know that, they love me and whatever, but like we were told from day one that if anybody speaks against the church or like questions why you're in it, then basically cut them out. And so in that one way, I've always been a little like, are you guys actually kind of rebellious? But I know quite a lot, not so much, when they moved, my parents, maintain that nothing happens. But I have some friends that got out after they moved over there. One of them, my friend Rachel, she said it's okay for me to mention her, but she's been on a couple podcasts. She's been on Life After God, and then she let me know about The Opportunist, and she was on that. And then I also talked to them in 2021.
This matriarch female group leader. Typically, with groups changing names, it's a rebranding tactic to leave behind allegations or smear campaigns, or to disguise themselves from any negative press that they may have received. And usually it's warranted negative press, of course. Is that the case here, or is Cheryl Walker just erratic in nature?
I definitely think that there was some trying to just dodge, I'm sure taxes was part of it and stuff like that. Because what's interesting is like they changed names, but they only moved once as far as while they were here. So the Freedom Fire and the Mariah were both, in one location. And I recall that, like, because again, she purported herself as a prophet, and so it definitely had to do with whatever she was prophesying at the time, because a lot of her prophecies and a lot of the stuff she brought in and the stuff that she changed, including the names and stuff, had to do with like what she was saying God's relationship was to us as the church, um both like the church as a whole and then us as the church, the chosen ones. And so um the I kind of, looking back, I can see that the Mariah ministry time was, and I'll talk about this again later, but I really think that like she had a longer game plan than a lot of people initially thought. Um, and so like I think the Mariah ministry was kind of like the stepping stone between Freedom Fire and oneness. Because, and especially like when you think about what Mount Moriah was, it was like a testing of Abraham to see if he would kill Isaac. And then, so, you know, both trying, but also not trying to get into her head, you know what I mean? So,
When you mentioned that the new teachings or the new beliefs that Cheryl would bring in, and it made sense at the time, it's a more of a gradual thing when it happens in real time. Of course, when we're looking at it on a chronological timeline, and we're saying, and then this came in, and this came in, and this came in, it sounds very sporadic, but
mm-hmm,
I imagine living those experiences where subtle changes are coming in over periods of time, months or
mm-hmm,
years, then it's not as drastic as it sounds, just kind of talking through it. And
yeah.
I wonder how you and your family became involved with Freedom Fire Ministries.
So, one thing that's kind of funny is from listening to your podcast, I came to realize that I've always, well, until I got out of that one, I've always been in a cult, because I grew up in the Assemblies of God churches. Um, we went to Ferndale Assembly of God, which is now called Wacom New Life Assembly. Um, I technically wasn't born there. My mom and my dad um, got married when I was 1.5. Um, I call him my dad. He raised me. He adopted me when I was 3. Um, but yeah, he's not my biological dad. Um, but yeah, um, they were already going there like as soon as she got together with him, and so we were kind of already primed. Assemblies of God is definitely Pentecostal evangelical. I uh I for a long time didn't know a whole lot of the terms, or like, it was very hard for me sometimes to differentiate like what exactly is different between some of these. Because I also can kind of see some like Baptist leaning in Assemblies of God too. Um, but um my parents, um I'm like third generation Whatcom County resident here. And so my parents had lots of friends and their parents had lots of friends. And so some of their high school friends were going to Freedom Fire and they just invited them because they were still in the stage where they were inviting new people, definitely like the, trying to grow a membership phase. Um, and we went, I was 12 years old, and we were sitting in like the either the second or third row, and what she liked to do when there was new people is she would give little prophecies like you can have a prophecy as a treat. And so she gave my parents like a blank or a dual prophecy, like a prophecy for both of them. And I don't really remember it. I'm sure it had something to do with like y'all are good together or whatever. Um, but then she prophesied over me. And I'm this chubby little 12-year-old girl sitting next to her obviously domineering father. And she tells me that God is telling me that I will always be your Abba Father. I'll be there when no one else is, like, everyone else has turned their face away from you. Um, I've seen you be stabbed in the back and I'm here to dress your wounds. Like I remember like whole and yeah, she sees me and like, you know, she was really good at cold reading people and she had gone to school for psychology. Um and also I'm sure, you know, especially like my parents' friends probably told her a little something, but it's not too hard to tell that again, chubby 12-year-old girl sitting next to a domineering father probably has friend issues, probably has daddy issues, you know. And so, but I just felt so seen and so like, oh my God, like God actually knows, you know, like what they say in Sunday school is real. And so I was hooked and it was just supposed to be a visit and I begged my parents to go back.
So your family have always had ties to Christian religion.
Well, so like my mom and dad, um, my dad grew up Catholic, um, and like my grandma's or was relatively devout. She's actually um become quite liberal in the last like 10 years or so. Um, but he wasn't like wasn't super devout in anything. Um, but when I was growing up, that's a lot of what I saw. We were very um committed members of the church, both in the Assemblies of God and this one. That my parents were definitely very like, you know, eager to please and eager to like, you know, do what needed to be done and like fill the slots and stuff. Like they were always really big in the Assemblies of God church of doing the coffee hour after the service and stuff like that. Um, both at Assemblies of God and then at Freedom Fire. My dad was a Royal Ranger commander, and my mom did some of the different missionettes. I think most of the time she worked with rainbows. Um, I was an honor star, but uh, and so he kind of tried to do some of the similar things later on at Freedom Fire. I don't remember what he ended up calling the group, but he led like a group of like teenage boys there too. Um, but I think this is something that I might have shared in my questionnaire thing, but um, I've like always had it in my head that like the church with Cheryl specifically, but I think I can kind of see it in a lot of churches, is that it was like a beehive. Um, and she was definitely the queen bee. And then she had like her like inner circle, like her right hand woman, right hand man, all that stuff. And they were like the drones, you know, like the um kind of protecting her. And then everybody else was worker bees. And you know, like they're just there to make everything go smoothly, to fund her. I'm sure was a, you know, even though she was always rich to begin with, she got so much money from her divorce with her husband. Um, and but also just kind of not expendable so much, but just like, you know, it wouldn't matter if you were there or not, essentially. Um, so she just needed people to follow her and basically worship her. So
Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. That should brighten your day a little. Actually, a lot. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
So you go as a 12-year-old, you have this prophecy handed to you by Cheryl, and you ask your parents, please, can we go back? What does your commitment to Freedom Fire Ministries look like from that point onwards? Is there sort of a typical schedule that the church would stick to? And what did the day-to-day interactions with services and stuff look like?
So yeah, it was almost like my parents gave their resignation at a job to the Assemblies of God Church, kind of like there was a slight transition period, and then we started going to Freedom Fire, and I mean, it was basically full bore from day one. I personally, as a preteen teenager, didn't have a whole lot that I was expected to do except for basically listen to my parents and go wherever they went, which was initially it was a typical, Sunday service schedule. And then usually I believe it was a Wednesday, either sort of like prayer or Bible study type thing. But things quickly changed and they never stopped changing, which is that one of the things I already mentioned is that they started really incorporating a lot of Jewish beliefs. So a lot more stuff happened on Saturdays instead of Sundays. And also then we would do Friday night stuff because they would want to do a Shabbat. And then, yeah, things varied and they would stay for, a couple months or so. But a lot of times, they would start adding things, and especially like, oh, we have a prayer meeting tonight, like something important. Cheryl has something that God needs to tell us and it can't wait. And especially when there was some pretty intense things over the years that like, it was like, you need to be a witness to this now. So as far as like our day-to-day, like it was still like you can have your job and your kids can go to school, but like sort of be in the world but not of the world type of thing. And it was, for me, it was really hard being in school during that time, especially because also we were in the process of moving right around that time too. Still in the same county, but I had to move schools. And but even before that, like, I told all my friends about this cool new church I was going to, and I was already a weird kid, and everybody thought I was even weirder after that. And so yeah, and so I was kind of hopeful going to a new church, new school, and actually kind of didn't talk as much about it until like I kind of sussed some people out. And also the school that I moved to was like I went from uh, a very large school district, and all of the schools were pretty big. And then when they all funneled into the high school was like, what was it, like 1,500 students or something like that. And then the school that I moved to, the high school was a total of 500 people or so. Like my graduating class had 90 something people in it. And so, everybody had been together since kindergarten, and it was very hard to. So actually, that kind of engendered me a little bit to the other kids that were in the church, somewhat. Again, I was a weird kid, so like I got along better with adults. Um, like teachers, I was always friends with my teachers, and then yeah, I was friends with a lot of the adults at the church. My sister's almost 7 years younger than me, and so again, a lot of those people that invited us to the church, like, they would hang out with my family, and so I already knew them and like talked to them. I was a very gifted child, so I was able to hold pretty good conversations with adults at a young age. And I think that actually is ultimately something that helped me figure out getting out later on.
Technically, it sounds pretty standard at this point for a church that exists. I mean, perhaps not typical in the sense that it's a female-led ministry. That in
Mm-hmm.
itself, in some parts of America specifically, might be very strange.
Mm-hmm.
But really, it's Sunday services. There's kids there. Everybody gets together. It's a pretty standard time. How does how do things begin to change internally? We've established that there's name changes. We've established that there are different beliefs brought in at certain times. But you are at a pinnacle age of development, and you're now being integrated into a new church, a new school. So I wonder how all the pieces fit together for you personally in terms of how things change over time.
Mm-hmm. Um, One of the things that happened pretty early on, um, and that, when I started figuring out getting out and like researched, uh, I forgot what like the more I guess PC term for it is now, but um instead of the C word, like
Oh,
what you
like new religious movements
thank
or
you.
high
Yes,
demand religious groups. Yeah.
thank you. Yes.
I mean, you
So when
can
I
call your group a cult. That's absolutely fine. I
okay,
think that's
I just
props to
I
you
wanna
if you wanna say that.
okay, I just wanna clarify. Um, but yeah, so I started researching cults, especially like at the behest of some adults in my life, my stepmom and the librarian at my high school. Um, but one of the front things that I found was love bombing, which is something that happened to me pretty early on my 13th birthday. Again, no one was Jewish. They had no right to do this, but they threw me a bat mitzvah, and complete with giving me a tallit, a prayer shawl that someone had made and like put um the Hebrew symbol for Anna, because that was something that God called me in some of my later prophecies, um, and said, because Anna in the Bible, um, like danced for God, um, and so that was what I was supposed to do, apparently. And if they could see me in the club now, um, but So and it was things like that. And uh but also, so I was struggling with school, trying to get to know people, trying to figure out if they'd be okay with finding out that I go to that church. um I had already come out as bisexual, like right around the time that we started going to Freedom Fire. And I think for a while my parents just kind of wrote it off as it's just a phase or whatever. Um, but like that was one of the first things I kind of led with when I got to my new school.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Coincidence? I think not. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere, even at 30,000 feet. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void were prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
And also, a couple of the friends that I made um, were, you know, obviously very newly into it because we're all, preteens, teenagers. But one specific friend was into Wicca. And so I borrowed some of her books and would go over, and we did like we sent a candle down the little creek behind her apartment and stuff. And my parents found out about that. They found the books in my room. And then, so yeah, that and being bi and some other stuff. Like I experimented with weed one time, and my dad found the remnants of that. When we moved from one house and then an apartment for a year and then another house. And when we moved into that house, by that time, kind of aside from all of the like going to church and stuff, like me personally, I was having a lot of behavioral issues due to a lot of just different kinds of abuse, and also a lot of mental health issues that I never fully got help for until later on in life. My mom tried to get me some help, but also the people that I ended up seeing misdiagnosed me. And so, all that is to say, when we moved to my new house, they made me live in a travel trailer on the edge of our property and like locked me out of the house and stuff. And so, and I think I've thought about it a lot, and I've talked to some of my therapists, and I really do think that that was an idea that my dad got from Cheryl. Um, and so they found all that stuff in the trailer, and they took me to Cheryl basically to have me exercise. Like she didn't do it in the, Latin throwing holy water on you, whatever, like the exorcist. But she did similar to what she would do a lot in our services, which again, like when we first started going, we're pretty, I mean, I I've been to other churches since, and like nobody else prophesies at new people. And but she she would put oil on her hand, and is usually like, like a olive oil or some other base, and then some fragrance and stuff, but it was anointing oil. And she'd put it on her hand, put it on your forehead, and pray over you. And at first, I think it was kind of like everybody just learned that it was just what you were supposed to do. And then at some point, like your mind and body just like actually thought that it was what you were feeling, which is that You're supposed to get slain in the spirit. You're supposed to get thrown back, and you're supposed to like start crying. And so all that stuff happened, and they thought that, I was fixed, but lo and behold. Um, and that was one of the things in one of the services. There was all the gifts of the spirit were plentiful. Like, she was the only prophet, although there were a couple people randomly throughout the years that would stand up and give a prophecy, but it always ended up supporting either what she was saying, or like basically spilling someone's secrets just kind of out of nowhere. But there was also speaking in tongues was a big one. And the way that it seemed a lot of people ended up getting it, and again kind of speaks to me to what I said earlier about she kind of had a long game, which includes like, I got into Wicca back then. I'm pagan now. I believe in like, some kind of energy. I don't really know, but like I know that there's other stuff out there. And I think that she figured some of that stuff out and was using it to just be nefarious. I don't personally feel that there's like the light and dark and good and bad and stuff like that. I think it's like you tap into stuff that most other people can't, and then use it for your own stuff, and which can be good or bad. And I think she was doing that. And so with that, she basically gave people tongues, and like she put her hand on my throat, and like she started saying it, and she was like, repeat it after me. And then I was finally able to do it. And throughout the years, it morphed, it sounded different. It always sounded like gibberish. Because like, especially when she was in her different eras of what she was bringing in, hers and then kind of everybody else's, surprise, surprise, would start to sound either kind of more like an Asian language. At one point, we were really into watching The Passion of the Christ, and so some of it sounded like the Aramaic, and stuff like that. I wasn't there when they started incorporating more of the like Celtic stuff, but I'm sure some of it started sounding more Celtic or Welsh or whatever, which you would probably be able to speak more to. And that was all just like in a couple of years. And then when it was the summer before high school, I went and visited my biological dad. And while I was there, his wife, Jeannie, I was just, waxing poetic about the church, and was still pretty much in love with it at the time. She's like, that sounds super weird. And she even took me to like a legit Southern Baptist church, but not like Westboro Baptist, but like, like just, and she was like, this is what, to her, this is what it's supposed to look like. And that is not what your church sounds like. And so she just encouraged me to just kind of start asking questions, maybe not like outright, but like trying to kind of observe. Also during that time, she encouraged me to call CPS about the trailer thing, specifically because when I was visiting, it was the summertime, but the winter before, my heater had broke, and I was using a space heater, so I was fine, but still, like, just the conditions were never okay to begin with. Nobody should be put in a friggin' travel trailer at 12 years old. But when I called, first of all, I said I'm calling for a friend, and then also they're like, it's the summer, you don't need a heater, and that was basically it. Um, and I just, I already like didn't want to do it to begin with. So when I was defeated by that, I was like, okay. Um, and I've always been like a people pleaser and like, um, just one, just because of the abuse and neglect, um, and just the things that happen to a lot of people, even as those things aside, but just in a conservative home. Um, I just, any chance I could to like make them happy. So I went back and like kept trying to go for a while, but also at war with like what I was seeing and like what I was feeling of like, this isn't right. Um, and when I started going to high school, I quickly became friends with my high school librarian, and she, started suggesting, Google these things. And she suggested that I write a memoir. I might at some point, but also it's one of those things I'm sure other people have said, like, um, because of the abuse and the mental health issues, like there's huge chunks of my childhood and even up in some of my 20s that I don't remember. And so like the stuff that like I do remember, I've like sat and been like, did this actually happen? And did it happen the way I thought it did? You know? And so that's why it's been nice, the last like since like 2016, when I learned about Rachel telling her story, and then the other podcast and some of the other stuff that's come out, just getting stuff reinforced that like I wasn't making that stuff up. Because for a long time I definitely felt pretty alone. Because when they moved in 2013, I was completely alone. Like I have some like other family around here, but at that time I was undiagnosed bipolar, so I was like, all kinds of wilding out. And then with that, I also uh, was in pretty hard throes of addiction. Um, uh, this last week was 6 years since I've been in recovery. Thanks. I did have a little blip last year, but and that was because my parents told me they weren't coming to my wedding when I was marrying another AFAB person. But yeah, it was hard for a lot of my teenage years because yeah, I I really wanted to believe, you know, um, I especially just because like if nothing else, like I remember at one point thinking like along the lines of like I just wish that I could like believe and do this stuff just because it would just make everything so much easier. um, but I'm a Sagittarius. I don't do anything easily.
That is the end of part 1 of this mini-series on Freedom Fire Ministries and Eva's Eden. To get in touch, you can find me at cultvaultpodcast@gmail.com or follow me on Twitter and Instagram at cultvaultpod. I'm your speaker, Casey, host of the Cult Vault Podcast.
Ryan Seacrest here. When you have a busy schedule, it's important to maximize your downtime. One of the best ways to do that is by going to ChumbaCasino.com. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino games like spin slots, bingo, and solitaire that you can play for free for a chance to redeem some serious prizes. So hop on to ChumbaCasino.com now and live the Chumba life. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.